Good morning, everyone. I hope you had a great first week of class. So happy Friday to everyone who's on the webinar. And as always, I appreciate you joining me. I'll spend about the first 30 minutes going through updates I think are important for you to know. And then as always, I'll reserve the last portion of the webinar for question and answer. But before we get into my updates, during my last webinar, somebody noticed in the background, I have a T-Rex and I have a person, and in the background, they noticed a person and the T-Rex behind them. Well, I want to tell you why the T-Rex is there and why the T-Rex was chasing the person. So when I was a campus president, I had developed a president's leadership class. And in my first leadership class, my students and I were talking, and I'm not sure how it even happened, but one of them was like, you know who you look like? My God, who knows? And the answer was Jeff Goldblum. And I'm like, I guess I kind of see that. So that kind of became the theme, this Jurassic Park theme. So my students actually bought me the T-Rex, the little Jeff Goldblum guy, and somewhere I have the Jeep from Jurassic Park. And so I used to bring those to class and everybody kind of had a good time with it. But it was funny during, I think, the last webinar, over my right shoulder, in the background, somebody saw the T-Rex chasing the guy. And so they were curious about why that happened. So well, it's maybe insignificant trivia, I thought I'd share the reasoning. So when you see them in the background again, you'll know why. As an FYI, I actually tried to contact Jeff Goldblum at the time because I thought, well, that'd be cool to have him address my president's leadership class. I did reach out to him, but never heard back. So anyway, the Jeff Goldblum comparison is how we're going to start out the day. And so I hope you again had a wonderful first week of classes, and I'm going to jump right into the topics that matter the most to you. And so a lot of what I'm going to talk about are directly related to personnel updates. So I want to start out and talk about the CFO position, so the Chief Financial Officer position for the district. So as you are aware, Melissa Thornsberry has been the acting CFO since late September. I think she went into that position on or around October 1st. I've decided that we're going to go ahead and advertise for that position probably starting in February. So very soon we'll be consummating a committee that will have cross-representation from our three campuses and the district office. My hope is that we can get the permanent position hired on or around May 1st. So from the hiring process, I wanted the district, meaning everyone throughout our 26,000 square miles, to know that one of my top priorities in the next 90 days is to fill the permanent position. So very soon that committee will be put together. I'll be reaching out to ask for representation from our various constituent groups and our campuses with the desire to have the position filled kind of on or around May 1st. That leads to a change in what I was originally going to do with the interim president position at Porterville College. So originally, you might recall that when Primavera Monarez became the interim president, the intent was for her contract to be 1 year in length. That contract was originally scheduled to end June 30th, 2025. I've made a decision after talking to the Porterville campus community. So I went to PC right before the holidays and had a conversation, had a town hall meeting with our constituents there. And I put forth this idea that I wanted to extend Prima's contract for another 6 months. And I'm going to tell everyone in the district the same thing that I shared with the Porterville community, so you all have the same information. I was concerned about trying to onboard the new CFO and a new college president at the same time. I felt like with the time that I have to invest in helping mentor two positions that are obviously critical to the district and to Porterville College, it was going to be difficult to do both of those at one time. Secondarily, as I think all of you know, we have our accreditation site visits occurring in September 2025. I felt like hiring a new president in July and then having the site teams visit in September. Although I'm not worried about the site visits, I thought that that really wasn't the necessary thing to do to the campus. So I felt like it was better to extend her, meaning Prima's contract, for another 6 months. So after talking to the PC community, Obviously, talking to interim President Menarez, I made the decision that we'll extend Prima's contract for another 6 months. So what that means is she'll be in the interim president position until or around December 31st, 2025. The intent would be is that the new president would come on board and start in January of 2026. Now, I intend to put together the hiring committee for that particular position probably in the next 30 days. And I'll again tell you the same rationale that I gave the PC community. So we will use a third-party search firm for the Porterville College presidency, much like we did for the chancellor position a year ago and the president of Bakersfield College. So we'll issue an RFQ. We will then pick a provider, a company that will help guide us through that process. However, I want that committee to be formed in the spring because I want the third-party search firm and myself to talk with the Porterville College community about what knowledge, skills, and abilities do you want to see in the next president. I think that's important. I want to do that before faculty leave in May. It's crazy. We just started the semester and we're already talking about May, but as you know, time goes very quickly. And so I want to make sure that this process starts out in February, culminates at the end of the year. But going back to why I want this group to meet in February, I intend to bring the third-party consultant to campus again to talk to our constituents and our community about what they want to see. I then want to share that information with the president hiring committee because we want to make sure that if there's any information there that informs a change or an update in the job description or the search materials, that can be done. So the committee is being put together early, but it is being put together for a very specific purpose. I wanted everyone in the district to know about that and to know why I was approaching it that way. So the position will be advertised over the summer. Again, the timing is such that our faculty will be off contract, but when faculty come back on contract, at that juncture, we'll be able to start reviewing applications. We'll start scheduling first round interviews, with the intent that second round final interviews would be held probably early to mid-October. So that means that finalists would come to Porterville College, they would spend the day on campus, they would interview with various groups, they would interview with the chancellor. As I've done with the search committees that are involved in hiring positions that report directly to me, I will go back to that presidential search committee before a final decision is made and have a discussion with them about, okay, here's what I saw in the finalists. What do you think? And so there will be a collaborative discussion with the committee before I make a final decision about that position. So that will occur probably in early November. The timing's important because if we intend for the president to begin their new role in January, then we need to give ample time for that individual to make a transition. So I wanted everyone to know about the process. But again, just to recap, we will begin with consummating the committee in February. We'll get the third-party search firm identified around the same time. I will ask that search firm meet with the committee probably early March. We'll be visiting with the campus community about knowledge, skills, and abilities, making adjustments as necessary to either the job description, the search materials, passing that by the committee one last time, advertising over the summer, starting the screening/interview process in sort of early fall, and then moving that forward with the idea, again, that we would hire the new president and they would be ready to assume that role in early January 2026. So to process-wise, I think that will work. It will help me onboard the CFO a little bit sooner than that. And then from a timing perspective, I will be able to help and mentor the permanent Porterville College president on the challenges that they face, on the things that I think are key issues. And so I just want to make sure that I have enough time to invest in both the CFO hiring and the permanent presidency for Porterville College. So that's CFO, Porterville College president. The next thing I want to talk about is a position that went to the board in August. So I'm going to walk back for a second in time. And so if you were attending the August board meeting or watching it via Zoom or read the minutes afterwards, you know that we made a couple requests to the board. One of those was to fund monies from reserve for early college positions at our institutions because we felt like there was a great opportunity to grow early college. You'll also remember at that time we had shifted early college back to Bakersfield College from the district office. And so in August, I brought a proposal to the board to do two things. One, again, as a recap, to fund early college positions to help our institutions grow their headcount. So more to come on that as we move forward. The second portion of that request from reserves was to fund a temporary position called senior advisor to the chancellor. The reason I asked the board for that at the time was the projects that were occurring, the things that were going on, my involvement with the Senior Leadership Institute that's now in its second cohort, dealing with the culture survey. I felt like I needed some temporary help to push some other projects forward. So as you may be aware, nothing has happened with that position yet, simply because there have been other things that my time has been invested in. And so now I'm ready to come back around to that. So a recap, early college, senior advisor, those proposals went to the board in August. I haven't taken any action on that position, so I'm going to tell you what I'm doing right now. So I consummated a search committee made up of outside individuals who are either business owners, former legislators, individuals that are involved in business throughout our county. So I used an external search firm, an external committee to look at applications, and we interviewed 3 finalists. So this is back actually a few months ago. I've been sitting on those because I've been doing some other things with personnel actions and again, making sure the Senior Leadership Institute was launched correctly. So I have made a decision about that position. So there were 3 finalists that were interviewed for, again, a temporary position. So I'm actually going to be using 2 individuals that were finalists. And so they'll be deployed to help on certain projects. One of those individuals is former trustee Agbalog. The other individual is the former president of Antelope Valley College, Ed Knudsen. Some of you may remember Ed because he actually worked for the district. So I'll be using Ed on some specific projects. I'll be using former trustee Agbalog on some existing projects. So I'll update you as I start to onboard both of those individuals. But given the skill sets that they both have, I think they will add tremendous value to the district. Ed, as a campus president, obviously has contacts with legislators, business and industry, and so I think he can be particularly helpful in some areas. Former trustee Agbalog, with his experience in business and industry, working in the state house as well with former Senator Gene Fuller. I think he has contacts in that area that can be helpful. So I've finally gotten back around to this position, but I wanted to remind everyone that that went to the board in August. I simply have not filled it because it has not been a priority up until this time. There were other things that I needed to do. So I wanted to make sure that the district staff, faculty knew what was going on. I'll update you on some of the projects. I'll be assigning both of them in the very near future. So moving on to staff at the district office, you might remember in the past, I talked about reducing the staff at the district office. You might remember that I've decided to eliminate the vice chancellor for workforce development from the staffing plan. I said in a previous webinar that my intent was to staff the associate vice chancellor for workforce education, and that person would really be the senior workforce development officer for the district. So I'm pleased to announce that Heather Ostash, who was the vice president for student services at Saracoso Community College, is now the acting associate vice chancellor for workforce education. So Heather's joining the district office staff. I'm excited to have her here because of her history with the district, the relationships she has throughout the district, the work she's done as a vice president with our other campuses. I think Heather can really help move forward our economic development, our workforce development, and our community development initiatives. But Heather's tenure in that acting position started commensurate with the start of the spring semester. So I wanted to make sure that you, as our campus constituents, knew that. And again, I'm really excited to have Heather on board. The next area that we've made a change in is human resources. So you may know that I made a change in that area, and now we have an interim Vice Chancellor for Human Resources. So Dr. Victoria Simmons is in a year-long contract with the district to be the interim Vice Chancellor for Human Resources. During the next 12 months, we'll be looking at our HR processes, not because I think that everything we do is wrong or what we do is broken and not working. That's not the point. The point is we should always look at our processes. We should always look at our procedures, and we should always ask ourselves the question in every functional area, are we being efficient? Are we being effective? And are we giving the students the value-added services that they need to be successful? So over the next 12 months, Dr. Simmons will be working with all of you in examining our HR structure, talking to all of our constituents about what their thoughts and needs are, and moving that entire process forward. I'm going to give you one example. So I've been thinking about for management positions, and that's a very broadly defined term. So let's say program managers, program directors, deans, and above through the hierarchy. I'm looking at the possibility of when we get down to finalists, doing some nationally normed evaluation instruments to better define fit of final candidates. So you may be aware there's all kinds of things you can do. Strength Builders is one of those. There are other nationally normed tests that you can give finalists to better determine how that person fits. I think we would all agree that when we get down to finalists, we know that every person who is a finalist has the appropriate credentials. We know they have the appropriate experience, the appropriate qualifications. Many times, as you know, those individuals as finalists have the preferred qualifications. So we have great candidates, but at the end of that process, we should always determine, is this person the right fit? And because you possess the credentials, the experience, the knowledge, doesn't necessarily mean those equate to the right fit and the right chemistry. I think all of you know that I'm working very intentionally to build a specific culture throughout our district, one that values and empowers employees, and in turn, values and empowers our students to reach their own individual educational objectives. The fit of a candidate is extraordinarily important, as I know you all know. And so those are the kind of value-added discussions that Victoria and I are having about, are there opportunities to look at management positions and just say, is there some more measurements we can take to best define the fitment of that individual for that particular position? So we'll have significant discussions about that, but it leads me to my next topic, and that is that I have asked our vice chancellors to make visits to all of our campuses. So in the very near future, the 4 vice chancellors from the district office will be coming to all of our campuses. The reason for that is so that you have direct access. So if you need to talk to Melissa, for example, about purchasing processes, requisitioning, vendors, you will have firsthand access to her. If you need to talk to Dr. Pfluger, Vice Chancellor for Educational Services and Student Success, you'll have access to Dr. Pfluger. Dave Barnett as acting CIO, if there's some issues that you want to speak with Dave that are related to IT, you'll have access to Dave. And then finally, Dr. Victoria Simmons as the interim Vice Chancellor for Human Resources, you'll have the opportunity to speak with her. Just as I go out and visit our campuses regularly, which I will continue to do, as a reminder, the next time I'll be out for town hall-esque meetings with you will be kind of late March, early April. So watch for that announcement soon. But I also believe it's important for our vice chancellors to come to our campuses and have a direct relationship with all of you. So again, you know who those individuals are. If you have issues, concerns, or if you want to say, hey, there's some things that are working good, I just wanted you to know that. Relationship building is one of the most powerful things we can do to help increase a positive culture throughout the district. I think it's exponentially easier to work with someone when you know a little bit about them, and that includes the chancellor, that includes the vice chancellors. I think it's why I'm so intent on being out and about across 26,000 square miles, because I believe it's important that not only do you know who the chancellor is, but you have an opportunity to interact with me. And I want to give a shout out to all of our employees throughout the district who have reached out to me, asked for individual meetings, individual conversations. Those have been helpful for me to learn more about your individual circumstances. And I hope those have been helpful in trying to resolve some concerns, some challenges, some opportunities that you see as well. And so I've really enjoyed the opportunity to have some one-on-one discussions. I will remind everyone on this webinar that I continue to be available for those types of conversations. I want to make sure that I'm always accessible. That is not going to change. Me being transparent isn't going to change. Me visiting our campuses isn't going to change. My expectation of vice chancellors isn't going to change. The reason I reiterate all of that is in 2025, calendar year 2025, I want to share 3 words with you, and that is continuity of operations. We've obviously had a lot of change. We're at a place now to where we need to start to gain more continuity of operations. Earlier, I told you about the CFO position. That's continuity of operations happening in the first or second quarter of 2025. Hiring the new Porterville president, while at the end of the year, those are all part of a larger continuity of operations plan that I have. I think it's important that we get people in place, we get permanent people in place. And again, I go back to fitment, that we make sure that we're putting people in place that believe the same thing, that are here to serve others, meaning to serve you just as I do, serving our students, serving our community members and our greater communities. And so that's what I'll be doing for the balance of the year, is working with all of you to ensure that we start to gain a better degree of continuity of operation. So moving all of those things forward is critically important to me. I want to close my remarks before I start taking questions and talk about a couple of other things I think is important. So one of the things that I'll be working on this spring semester is how to provide some ingenuity funding to our campuses. So think about Shark Tank for an example. If you've ever seen Shark Tank, then you know that people come and present business ideas to the sharks, and then they decide if it's something they want to invest in. I believe as a district, we've done some of these things similarly in the past, invested in ideas. I'm really interested in this whole continuity of operations to say, what are we doing now that we could do better? Are there things we're not doing now that we could be doing? And sort of giving a call out to all of you to say, what are those things? And then giving you an opportunity to receive some funding to do that. Hopefully, there are things that promote ingenuity. I'd like those to be things that help us across the entire district. If it helps one institution, that's okay too. But I'm really looking at things that, how can we implement ingenuity across our entire district? How can we be more entrepreneurial, whether it's programs, whether it's office procedures? Think about the scope of our business operations. Think about all the things we do on a daily basis. Are we doing everything we should be doing? If we are, how can we improve those processes? If there's things we're not doing and you're like, you know, I just have this great idea, but I need a way to make it come to reality. I want to start talking about ingenuity, because we have amazing intellectual capacity throughout this district with everyone that's on this call and everyone who works for the Kern Community College District. So how do we start leveraging the subject matter experts we have in the classroom, the subject matter experts we have outside the classroom, and how do we start to bring these ideas together in an entrepreneurial spirit and start to really grow our own ideas and concepts? Could be related to artificial intelligence inside the classroom or outside the classroom. Could be better business processes across the district. Could be serving the community better in some way. I want you all to think about that and think about what might work in the very near future. We will have more conversations about how this will all come together, how I intend to fund it, how I intend to make it work. But I just think that we need to start leveraging our own subject matter experts, meaning all of you, and giving you the opportunity to proliferate these ideas, who knows, throughout the district and beyond, quite frankly. Before I take questions, a couple other things that I want to touch. So I'm also thinking about some ideas, and I want to give a shout out to Dave Teasdale, who runs our 21st Century Energy Center here at the district office. Dave's team also engages in a lot of our customized workforce training. So these are not my ideas. And Dave and I had a conversation the other day, and Dave's like, wouldn't it be great if we could gather people together, whether it's management, faculty, or staff, in symposiums or summits, and do some training, do some professional development that those groups want. And so I think it's a great idea. Obviously, logistically, there's a lot of work to be done with that, but I was intrigued by the concept, because think about the opportunity to gather everyone together and talk about things that are important to you. So in other words, I would want to talk with our faculty, our staff, and our management group about, what are your top of mind issues? What do you want to know more about? And then how do we put together opportunities for you to meet with your peers and learn more about topics or share information, building relationships throughout the district? Again, I will go back to that time and time again. The stronger we are is because of the relationships we built together. It's why I'm very intentional about building relationships with every single employee here, meaning the entire district, because that's how we grow together. That's how we achieve more together. And so I want to thank Dave for bringing these things up to me. And now I just need to figure out logistically how this might look. But I think there's a lot of power in togetherness. I think there's a lot of power in building relationships. I know there's tremendous power in working together towards the same end outcomes. I'll very briefly mention a budget update, because I think that's important as well. As you all know, the state's starting to work on its budget. If you've seen any information that has come out from the governor's office or the state chancellor's office at this juncture, community colleges are in a position where I don't believe in the current iteration of the budget that we're going to be harmed. Now, I want to talk about a couple variables really quickly. So the awful situation just a couple hours south of us, and my thoughts and prayers go out to everyone in Altadena, Pacific Palisades, other areas that literally have lost everything. As a state, we're going to have to figure out this massive rebuilding effort, right? And how that's all going to come together. So I say that because there's a potential that whatever those may look like, those rebuilding efforts may very well have an impact on the state budget. I don't know that yet, but I want to reiterate to you all that I will be spending significant time in Sacramento in the spring to ensure and protect our interests and make sure that the things that are important to our district are protected and strengthened. So right now, the preliminary budget, very preliminary, could be subject to change. Community colleges right now are in a very good place. You may know that that's partially due to state revenue projections have been exceeded. So in other words, a year ago, when the state made projections about how revenue would be coming in, we've exceeded those projections. That's a great thing. But remember, with the situation in the greater Los Angeles area, obviously that could have an impact on state revenue collections over the next several months. So we'll be watching that very closely. But from a budgetary perspective, right now, a lot of work to be done. I like where we are today, but we need to do two things. We need to make sure that what we have now is protected. And if there's any areas where we believe we have opportunities for growth funding, that we put that forward as well. So I'll continue to update you on the budget process as it moves forward through the legislature, through the proposed budget, the final budget this fall. But obviously, we monitor those situations very carefully. I'll continue to do that. But I wanted our faculty, staff, and management teams to know that right now, as community colleges are concerned, again, the beginning looks very good, but we'll see how that process unfolds. So that takes me through the majority of topics that I have. I think it's 9:31. I wanted to spend about 30 minutes with you. And so moving forward, we're now at the point to where we're ready to begin asking questions and giving answers to questions. All right. Give me just 1 second, and I'm going to look at the questions that are already here. So here's the first question that I'll answer. So what kind of deliberation or criteria is there regarding hiring search consultants? So I'll give you an example. So before my arrival, there was an RFQ, request for qualifications, issued to hire search consultants for both the Chancellor search and the Bakersfield College search. So the process that I intend to invoke is this. So let's talk about the Porterville president, because that's what this applies to, is that I will share the RFQ with the committee once I get that group put together. And so the RFQ essentially says that we're looking for a search firm that can help recruit candidates from the United States that has a track record of placing senior level positions, that has a track record of working collaboratively with single college districts, multi-college districts. So I would say that based upon previous RFQs, we will look at the one that we'll send out in late February and ensure that that meets the need. And so I will say that criteria wise, I'll be working with the committee to ensure that whatever's in there is indicative of what we want for our next college president at Porterville College. So that will go out to several search firms in the state and around the country. And then what we'll do is we'll vet those and pick a finalist based upon that process. But the deliberation will essentially be between the chancellor and, quite frankly, in this situation, primarily the search committee, because the consultants will be working directly with me. They'll be working directly with the search committee. And so obviously I want to make sure that the search committee's voice is. So I hope that answers the question about, again, from a deliberative standpoint, that the committee and I have some conversations about what type of search firm is best suited to help us move this process forward. So thank you for that statement. The next one that I'm going to read is, can reserve KCCD funds be made available for departments at BC to update outreach materials like retractable banners and table covers to reflect our new branding? So the question, I'm going to hold on for just a second because there's a siren out here. Oh, it's hard to compete with the siren right outside the window. Sorry about that. Just to reiterate the question, it essentially was, can we use reserve funds for things like updating outreach materials, retractable banners, table covers to reflect our new branding? And just so all of our district personnel know, BC went through a process, a rebranding process. So they have a new image, they have new branding and marketing materials. And so the question is, again, we have to replace stuff, right? We have all these things that were indicative of old branding now that we have new branding. So I'm going to answer the question about reserves. So just to give you the bigger picture about reserve funds. So the district has reserve funds, the campus, meaning Bakersfield College, has reserve funds. So I would see two scenarios here that could help with this. One of those scenarios is looking at existing budget funds at Bakersfield College, particularly as we start to get into the end of the third quarter of our fiscal year, meaning right before the end of the fiscal year, July 1st. There may be some funding that we didn't spend, right? There were things we put into our budgets that we intended to expend, but for whatever reason, we didn't. And so many times we can transfer funds to different departments, right, to help departments who need it cover expenditures. So I would say two things. One, I'll talk with Dr. Flagger about that. Secondarily, BC also has reserve funds that the campus could make a request to the board and say, look, we went through this rebranding and re-imaging process, and we have a lot of things that we need to replace because it's important for us to step out with this new branding and make sure that people know who we are and who our new logos are. The board approves, anytime we have monies from reserves, the board approves those monies regardless of what they are for. That is a request and a subsequent approval by the board. So on that question, I certainly wouldn't rule that out. So I would say two things regarding that. One would be, can we identify some existing funds at BC that might be able to be transferred if they're not being used for what they were intended. Obviously, we don't want to take monies away if people intend to use it. Secondarily, we could put together a proposal if there was a need to do sort of a college-wide re-imaging, rebranding thing. So Dr. Flagger and I will have a conversation about that as well. That's a really good question. Thank you, because my final comment will be is that branding and imaging is important. And whenever you go through a rebranding process, you want to make sure that what you're doing is uniform. So if you have table covers, if you have tents, if you have materials, what you don't want to do is send out a confusing message about branding with an old image and newer images. So that's a really great question. So thank you for that. The next question is, are there plans to replace the director of risk management position at the district office? Excuse me. I'm also going to talk about the second question because this is different, but it kind of goes along with it, because that question is, what will Abe be doing? So I'm going to reiterate this because I'm going to answer both of those at the same time. First question again is, are there plans to replace the director of risk management position at the district office? And what will be Abe doing? So part of that answer is some of the former duties of the risk management are things that Abe will be doing. Abe will also be doing some other things as well, but we will be looking at a hybrid situation with the director of risk management and reassigning some of those duties. The reason I'm answering these questions together is they both, in my mind, now go together. And so I'm making sure that you all know that excuse me, there are plans to replace that position. There are plans for Abe to do some of that. Abe is still involved in negotiations right now with CSEA. I thought that was important because I didn't want to make a change, not midstream, but quite frankly, at the end of negotiations. So Abe is continuing to work with CSEA as we wind up that process and that project for the spring term. I will update you all on duties and responsibilities, not only for him, but the risk management position as well. I'll also make a comment about risk management as it relates to safety and security. In March, I will be meeting with the campus presidents and their directors of safety and security in sort of a district safety and security summit. I'm mentioning that because risk management is a part of safety and security. So I want to talk to our campus presidents and our leaders in safety and security across the district to better understand the issues that are confronting our campuses as they relate to safety and security. Obviously, we never know when some type of incident could unfold or happen. And again, God forbid anything unconscionable should happen, but how prepared are we for anything? Could be a natural disaster, could be, again, God forbid, knocking on wood, an earthquake, but how prepared are we from a risk management standpoint and a safety and security standpoint to deal with this? And so in answering both of these questions, I also wanted to deliver that information because I see all of those things as related. Abe has a role in some of that, but risk management will be something I'll be looking at in the next probably 15 days at an upcoming webinar. I'll report back to all of you on that. The next question is, was the CTE Associate Dean position posted to the public? If so, when? I'm not certain about which CTE Associate Dean position that is. So I need a little bit more information to answer that. 100% happy to answer it, but I'm not sure what position that is. So if whoever answered the question can provide some more information here, or you can also email me as well, but I'm just not sure which position that is. Again, happy to answer it. I just need a little bit more information to know, what exactly were we talking about with that CTE Dean position? I'm going to grab a quick drink before I go on to the next question. Okay, this one is a little bit longer. I appreciate the intentionality with which you're trying to keep all KCCD stakeholders informed of our operations and the decisions you are making. As you know, diversity is a core value of our district. Nationwide, there is a sustained movement to dismantle DEI programs and practices. As Chancellor, have you experienced those anti-DEI forces? Have pressure from anti-DEI forces influenced our district's commitment to DEI since you became Chancellor? Do you commit to increasing or at a minimum maintaining the current level of support for our colleges and districts' DEI initiatives? That is a very timely and great question. It's multi-pronged, so I'm going to work through the various tenets asked. So I'm going to answer the first question is, as chancellor, have you experienced those anti-DEI forces? I'm kind of chuckling a little bit because in my previous position, 100%, I encountered a circumstance where DEI in the state I just served in was going away, and you were not allowed to use those acronyms with anything that you did. And so 100% I dealt with that before. And so the subsequent answer to that question is, well, what did you do? Well, we continue to do the same things we were doing. We might have looked at it through a different lens, but here's the bottom line with DEI, and then I'll move on to the next DEI questions and make sure I answer those. Diversity, equity, and inclusion isn't just a framework. It's not just a philosophical concept. Diversity, equity, and inclusion at its heart is bringing together peoples from diverse backgrounds, whether that's race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, whatever it is, it's bringing people together because here's the bottom line. When we bring people together from diverse backgrounds and diverse experiences, I think 100% we're better because of it. As a team, we're better because of it. Our students are better because of it. I would also add to this international. It's something you've heard me talk about since I've become chancellor. I think we need to be more engaged and intentional in international relationships because we can do some really cool things with partners across the globe. I mention that because to me, it's also part of DEI. So I've absolutely experienced in more than one state that I've served in an anti-DEI philosophy. It didn't change what I was committed to then as a college president. I'm going to read the next question because it talks about being chancellor, and it says, have pressure from anti-DEI forces influenced our district's commitment to DEI since you became chancellor? The answer is at this juncture, no. The second part of that is, do you commit to increasing or at a minimum maintaining the current level of support for our colleges and districts' DEI initiatives? I'm in full support of all those initiatives. I'm going to give you a scenario where we may have to look at how we're doing it. I'll explain why. So Title IV funding, I'm going to oversimplify it, is financial aid funding. Financial aid funding is essentially flow-through funds from the United States Department of Education to help students across the United States attend community colleges and universities. I hope there's never a scenario that exists where some type of edict or some type of directive is given that Title IV funding could be in jeopardy for institutions who don't decide to follow a certain set of rules or regulations when it is related to DEI. If that's the case, we'll deal with it when it happens, but it doesn't change my commitment. But I did want to give you a scenario where we may have to at least re-examine what we're doing. I don't think it would be transparent, nor do I think it would be honest to say that there may be things that occur at a federal level that could have an influence on what we do as a college district. However, I will always maintain a commitment to equality and differences of opinions and people from, again, diverse backgrounds, whether it is race, ethnicity, whatever that might be, gender orientation. Here's what I want. I want the best possible people working at the Kern Community College District. I think all of you want the same thing. When we hire new colleagues, I think you all want people who are committed to the same mission that I am, the same mission that you have, and that's to educate students. And again, our students, I think, have better experiences when they're exposed to people from different backgrounds, because then we share those experiences with our students, with our colleagues. And so our collective strength is in diversity. Our collective strength is in equality. And quite frankly, our collective strength is being inclusive. As chancellor, I don't want to be exclusive. I want to be inclusive. And so I commit to having a district that is inclusive to human values. I'll give you a quote from Dr. Martin Luther King: "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." That's from a letter from the Birmingham jail. And so sometimes small injustices become larger injustices. And we need to make sure that we're not committing injustice by not ensuring that we hire the best people, that we have a diverse workforce, that we're inclusive, and that we're all working together towards the same outcome. So I really, really appreciate that question, because there are all these forces that are going on right now that, quite frankly, we can't control. And in strategic planning, things like that are called uncontrollable variables, meaning that those are things that can exert a great influence on your operations, but you don't have any control over them. But we will control, we'll continue to work on building a world-class workforce. So thank you for the question. So this next question is, has any thought been given to utilizing innovation funds to help remove systemic roadblocks that may needlessly slow down the work necessary to fulfill our mission? 150%. Innovation, sometimes people think about innovation as bleeding edge things. And yes, that's important, right? Bleeding edge, cutting edge innovations are important. But innovations in process and procedure, I think I'll argue, are just as important, because this question is removing systemic roadblocks. Because look, organizations are bureaucracies. The bureaucracy is in place to have some degree of order and some systemic functionality to accomplish your missions. Sometimes organizations indirectly put up roadblocks that, in this case, I'm going to quote this, that may needlessly slow down the work. So I am absolutely interested in hearing from you when I put this plan together for innovation funds. Innovation could be as powerful and as simple as, hey, we have a process that's a roadblock. Can we refine that process so it isn't a roadblock? So for everybody listening, for everybody who will come back and rewatch this, or for people who will come back and watch the recording in the future, yes, innovation isn't, again, to reiterate, just about doing great things that haven't been done yet, or building on things that are really bleeding edge technologies and trying to build those out. Innovation is being better at your craft. Innovation is functioning at a higher level. So 150%. I would love to hear more about how we can remove systemic roadblocks. That will be one of the guiding principles when we talk about innovation funds. That will be one of the guiding principles that says it could be as simple and as elegant, by the way, as improving business processes. So thank you. That's a great question. The next question is, how are we handling the technical issues from the district offices that have caused student distress for their registration? I need a little bit more information about what those technical issues are, quote unquote, from the district office. I'm happy to figure that out and have additional conversations. I just need a little bit more background about specifically what we're talking about, so I know better to answer that question. You can either re-enter it here, or you can also send me an email, because what I don't want to happen is for us to run out of time, because I think we've got about 10 minutes left. So if you could please provide me a little bit more detail, I can better answer that question. If there are, I'll just say this, if there are some technical issues that have caused student distress, then I need to know more about that so we can work on finding a solution together. So please don't leave without me getting some additional information. Or again, if that's not possible, please make sure that I get an email, stephen.bloomberg@kccd.edu, to better answer that question. And then, team, as I always do, I'll feed that back to you. So you might recall after the last webinar, I had a few things that I needed to follow up on. I'll do the same thing here, but I just need a little bit more information to answer that. The next question is, could you provide insight into the rationale behind the step placement decisions on the new salary schedule for managers. It appears that many senior managers were assigned to step one alongside less experienced managers. Furthermore, it seems likely that new hires may also be placed at step one or higher, potentially aligning their salaries with those of more experienced managers. So let's talk about that process. So we use a third-party consultant to look at about 10 different community college districts, compare and contrast our management salaries with similarly sized and similarly geographically located districts. Out of that came the new salary schedule. And so the question here is dealing with where people got placed. So I'm going to give you some insight into the rationale. So one of the things I thought was important was to get this done before the end of the fall semester, because this is something that's been sitting for a while. We know that our managers weren't being compensated at a level that was close to, again, other similarly sized districts or districts with similar geography. So in other words, we looked at districts where real estate is similarly valued here, as opposed to districts where real estate was at a much higher value, and then used all that data to establish the salary schedule. And the question's true. A lot of individuals, not all, but a lot of individuals got placed in the beginning at the lower levels of that salary schedule. Part of the intent was to get everyone moved to that new salary schedule so we could start looking at then where should they logically go from there. Now, step one in the new schedule is higher than the highest steps in the old schedule. So to be clear, those managers are making more than what they made before, but I understand the question about somebody who comes in with less seniority, right? Somebody who comes in with potentially less experience, right? They could be placed in that new step alongside somebody who, let's say hypothetically, has been here for 10 years, right? So there's some inequality, if I can use that word, in the salary schedule. So moving forward to kind of answer the second part of that question, we're going to be looking at how everyone was placed in that salary schedule. For some reason, my camera just went off. Give me 2 seconds so I can go over here and turn it back on. Okay, not sure why that happened, but getting back to the question, in the next 60 to 90 days, I'm going to be looking very specifically at placement, at where everybody was placed, understanding that there's going to need to be some movement in there. And so I 100% understand your concern about where people were placed. And again, the potential effect of placement of people who will be coming on the salary schedule that are new versus people who have been here for some time. And unintentionally, the question before was like internal barriers, right? Unintentionally creating some internal inequities about placing people. So I'm really glad that you asked that question, because it's important to make sure that people are placed appropriately and they're placed in the salary schedule commensurate with their credentials, skills, and experience. So thank you for that question. The next question is, when can we expect all interim positions to be filled, as there are several at the district and PC? Will we be given a comprehensive timeline? So for some of these things, as I've talked about, I intend to fill CFO before May. I intend to fill Porterville president by the 1st of January of 2026. On the interim positions, I'm not sure what other interim, well, I guess at PC, there is a vice president for student services, and I think there's some other director level positions as well. As those positions relate to the presidency, I think part of it depends upon the decision of the permanent president at Porterville College. So I would say, with specific regard to PC, some of those interim positions, if that's a part of the question, they may be delayed somewhat because of rendering a decision about the permanent president of the campus that may or may not have an effect on those other positions. And so that kind of depends. If you could give me some more information about positions at the district, one of the positions we just talked about with Heather Ostash was the Associate Vice Chancellor for Workforce Education, because Heather's in an acting role. That position reports directly to Dr. Pfluger as Vice Chancellor for Ed Services and Student Success. I believe Dr. Pfluger's intent is to have that position filled before the end of the fiscal year, but I'm happy to get more information out about that. But I also need to know what positions you may be referring to at Porterville. If there are positions related to the presidential search process, those will probably need to wait until the presidential hiring decision is made. But if there's positions that are not related to that, I'm happy to look into those too. I've got to step over and click off 2 Zoom notifications that came up because they're covering up questions. Okay, now that that is out of the way, I can go to the next question, which is, will Victoria participate in the next contract cycle with CSEA? Yes, she will. As the position she holds moving forward, she will participate in those as well. Next question is, I'm trying to hurry because I have 3 minutes and I want to make sure I get through these questions. Given the start of the year, in the spirit of setting personal and professional goals, focusing on the continuity of operations and getting to know you better, what are your goals for maintaining wellness as a foundation of our individual and organizational well-being? Awesome question. I cannot tell you how important, and when we talk about wellness, I'm going to include mental health. I'm going to give you an example that's happening at Porterville College right now, and then I'll give you some thoughts about what I intend to do. So Porterville College is reopening their wellness center to their faculty, staff, and management after those constituent groups not having access to that in some time. And so Porterville is doing some type of study in this semester to see how that usage is. What I'm going to say in addition to that is, one of the things that we've got to do is have a wellness plan for the district, meaning simple things like activities that promote wellness. Wellness walking. From time to time, I will step out of my office and walk outside for 2 or 3 minutes. You may do the same things. I may walk the labyrinth of the district office just to get away, clear my head, think through some challenges that I'm working through. Wellness is critically important, and I'm 100% committed to that. So I'm going to get back to you, if I may, on some goals for maintaining wellness, because I think it's so important. And I'll say wellness, mind, body, and spirit, ensuring that we maintain wellness of the mind, wellness of the body, and wellness of the spirit. I'll kick that back to you all as well. If you have any specific ideas about that, would you please let me know? I would love to know what are the kind of things that would really resonate with you, either at the district office, at our campuses, at our extension centers. What can we do? Because remember, we've also got to ensure that wellness activities permeate not just our main campuses and main operating locations, but we need to make sure that that's a unilateral effort throughout the district. So this is on my list of things to give you feedback about the things I want to do, but I'd also encourage you to give me some more feedback as well. The next question is, thank you for highlighting the importance of relationship building. As a new hire, I recommend a stronger onboarding process for management. I 100% agree with you. And as we move forward with Victoria, one of the things we're going to be talking about is just onboarding, that whole process throughout the entire district as we onboard people to make sure that they're onboarded, they feel welcome. That is a great question. That is something that I'm already having conversations with her about. I'm going to dismiss these 2 Zoom pop-ups. I always appreciate Zoom, but at a certain time, it can become kind of annoying. So I'll get to the last few questions I have here. And if I don't have time to answer these, rest assured, I will answer these in an email and feed them back to you. So if I don't get to everything right now, I will answer the question. So don't have any apprehension about having a question and not being answered. So the next question is there a new district-wide policy of no longer hiring those serving as an interim into the permanent position if they have successfully been selected through an open recruitment? There is not a new district-wide policy of no longer hiring those serving as interim. So I'm not aware of any policy efforts that are being made to no longer hire those serving as interim. So from a policy perspective, I can say that I haven't been given nor have I vetted a new district-wide policy. Let me get to one more really quickly. With the initial budget being released and it's seemingly showing California community colleges being fined next fiscal year, can all the colleges expect to potentially be allowed to get additional faculty positions for next academic year to continue to grow? That possibility is certainly there. We need to obviously track the budget process as it goes, just to make sure that there isn't some 11th hour change to the budget. Again, the big variable that none of us really know about yet is recovery efforts for the Los Angeles area fires, because that damage estimate is now nearing $100 billion. I don't know what role the state may or may not play in that, but I'll also answer that question about, it's important to me to talk to our academic senates and our academic leadership about faculty positions, because the question here is correct. It's hard to continue to grow in areas that two things are true. A, we may not have a full-time faculty member, or B, we may not have enough full-time faculty members to appropriately grow the program because we're relying on adjuncts, which are critically important, but it's hard to have continuity of operations, to use that term again, when we have significant amount of adjuncts. So I had a conversation recently with one of our academic senates about this very issue. I reiterated to them what I'll say to you is that I'm committed to trying to find ways to grow full-time faculty numbers, because quite frankly, we know that's the best way to grow student enrollment. There's one more question here. I'm going to go ahead and answer it, even though we're a little bit over, just because we've got one left, and that way it's not hanging out there. The last question is there an update on how soon Bakersfield College will have an admission and records director? I'll talk to President Flagger about that and get that answer back to you. Happy to provide an update. I'm not sure where BC is in that process, but I'll absolutely find out and let you know. So I've got 3 or 4 follow-up items that I'll get back to you all. And then if you have other questions, as always, please don't hesitate to let me know. Just in closing, I appreciate all of you. I continue to be humbled by the work that you do. I'm humbled to serve, and I want to be very intentional about that word. I'm humbled to serve as your chancellor. I'm humbled to be out and about on our college campuses and see firsthand the transformational and transcendental work that you're doing. Thank you, team, for everything, because you're what feed me. You are what gets me excited in the morning about coming here, because I'm serving a really amazing team. I'm serving really amazing people doing an awesome job. So anything else I can do to help you as your servant leader, let me know. With that, have a great weekend. I think the weather is going to be a little suspect in passes. So if you're out and about, there is a winter weather advisory for the Tehachapi Mountains, for the Grapevine. Be safe as you're out and about. And remember one thing above all, my friends, and that is this: always be kind to everyone, because we never know what they're going through. So with that, have an amazing rest of your Friday, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye, everyone.